if you say, despite the fact that I have never, or although I have not done X, you're only giving them reasons to reject you. So focus
Yes.
on what you do bring to the table.
If your goal is to someday work internationally, one of the absolute best things to do is learn directly from recruiters and hiring managers. These are the people that are going to decide whether or not you get a job. Knowing what they look for is a massive advantage. My friend Cathy is a career advisor and corporate recruiter with decades of experience here in the United States. In this video, you will learn directly from her some of the biggest interview mistakes to avoid, what recruiters actually look for, why memorizing a script is not a good idea, and how to share your accomplishments the right way. Enjoy. Okay, well, first of all, thank you so much for your time, Cathy. I'm really looking forward to learning from you, and I'm sure you have a ton of insight to offer job seekers.
I certainly hope so. And it's always a pleasure to be collaborating with you, Grant. So, a little bit about my background. I am currently working at a large university here in Boston, where I work with undergraduate students as a faculty member and a career advisor focused on helping them secure meaningful internships that we call co ops. Co op means a cooperative agreement between the university and an employer to provide a student what we call an experiential learning opportunity to help prepare them for the future of work, which is super important. And undergrads get the chance
So,
to do two of these for 6 months at a time. So it's a very important for these students, and it's exciting for me to see where they land. So prior to that, I was still at the same university, but doing similar work with graduate students for over 10 years at two schools of higher education, not only my current employer, but another college in the greater Boston area. And prior to that, I worked as a career counselor for individuals who suffered a job loss. It was an outplacement agency, and spent over 15 years as a corporate recruiter working with managers to fill jobs from entry level fund accountants to C suite management consultants at two reputable financial services organizations.
wow, so you've really kind of seen it all in terms
I
of
have.
recruiting from that first internship for a young student all the way up to executive level professionals.
Mhm. I have, yeah, for sure. I really seen, the process from, being an undergraduate to a graduate, and then in terms of, internships, and we call them residencies, co-ops, and then through their full-time search, which is, very important, and seeing all different types of financial services jobs in these large financial service organizations really gives me an appreciation for the hiring process and the interview process for sure.
Absolutely. So I feel like one of the biggest challenges or problems that job seekers of all types have is a lack of understanding between how they present themselves and what recruiters are actually looking for.
Correct.
So going back to your time in recruiting and talent
Mhm.
acquisition,
Mhm.
what would you say are some deal breakers or some things that would immediately want you to reject a candidate?
I think one of the things that saddens me and it concerns me is that applicants don't take the time to really research the industry and the company. They may take a look at the job description, but I'll say to them, well, why do you want to work at this company? Or what
Mhm.
is it about this industry that excites you the most? And they're really unable to explain that to me.
Mhm.
And with all of the online resources on the internet these days, and with any
Yeah,
public
yeah.
libraries, with all of those online resources, really, you need to take the time to do that because it only helps your candidacy. It can't hurt. The other thing is the lack of enthusiasm for the job.
Mhm.
If you're sitting there and you're being passive and you're not really asking questions, or you don't really seem super interested, then that sends me a message that maybe you're not the right person. Because one of the things, Grant, you and I have talked about is the likability factor. In the
Yes,
first 10
yes.
minutes of an interview, there's a lot of small talk. And I often get asked by students and alumni, why does that happen? It's the do I like you phase. Can I put you in front of my clients? If we were
Mhm.
stuck in an airport for half an hour, would I want to spend time with you? Will you work well cross functionally? Will you work well with my team? So it's really
Mhm.
important
Mhm.
that you be likable, you be enthusiastic, and you demonstrate that you really are interested in doing this job. The other thing that is a red flag for me is an inability to demonstrate that they're a fit for the job. And every single job posting or job description, well, most, I should say, I'd say 95%, have a section in the second half called requirements or qualifications or what we're looking for, or what you need to have.
Mhm.
And it's really important as an applicant that you do what I call gap analysis, where you really look at, if there are 9 things listed, how many of those do you have? What do you bring to the
Mhm.
table, bring to the job that sets you apart from the rest of the competition? Because you can't control the competition, but you can control the way you present yourself. So it's really important that you're able to articulate, of these 9 things, and I have 7 of them. And again, it's not enough to claim that you have it. You need to tell me some stories to demonstrate that you have experience in
Yes,
that
yes.
area. When you're not able to do that, that's a red flag for me. And the last red flag is a tendency to push your own agenda that has nothing to do with what the job requires,
Hmm.
or talk about things that aren't aligned with what the manager is seeking.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
those are deal breakers for me.
Makes a lot of sense, yeah.
Mhm.
And I like that you said do the company research because
Yeah,
I think a lot of people believe, oh, you're a leader in your industry and I respect your long history or something very generic like that that could
right.
apply to tons of companies is enough
Sure.
research. You really want something that's unique and specific to that
Correct.
company.
It's impressive, and managers will say, wow, they went the extra mile to do that
Yes,
research,
yes.
or talk to people who either worked at the
Mhm,
company or
mhm.
used to work there. They can tell you some great insights too.
Absolutely. Great points.
Yeah,
Anybody can say I'm hardworking and passionate,
right.
but if you show that you've put that extra effort to really know the company,
Mhm.
that's going to be a much more powerful way
Right.
of revealing your passion and your value.
It makes you memorable to the hiring manager. They'll say, oh, that was the candidate who had done some research, on Bloomberg or Morningstar or something like that. That says a lot.
Great points. Yeah.
Mhm.
So we'll kind of shift and talk about the opposite of what you just
Okay,
explained.
sure.
So, how are some ways candidates can make a good impression? So, that likability factor you
Mhm.
mentioned,
Yeah.
how to incorporate those specific examples that sell your abilities. What advice would you have for people on explaining those things?
Yeah, I think first of all, it's the likability factor. It's asking really thoughtful questions that shows that you've really looked at the job description, you've researched the company, you've talked to people, all of that really resonates with the manager. I also think that telling powerful stories that demonstrate that you have the skills and experience to add value. I keep talking about that over and over again, but
Mhm.
I talked with a manager recently who said I had a bunch of people apply for an opening on my team, and on paper, they appeared to have the skills and experience, and yet they didn't tell any stories that helped to solidify that for me or to confirm
Mhm.
my impression. So that's
Mhm.
really, really important to tell those stories. And the other thing is, and it may sound small, but it makes a huge difference. It's fine to smile. It's fine to demonstrate they have a
Mhm.
little bit of a sense of humor. I
Mhm.
interviewed for this job that I just got, and I had to make a presentation. And halfway through the presentation, the internet crashed. And I could have fallen apart. I didn't. I
Yeah,
made a
yeah,
joke about the gremlins in the system, and they all laughed and said, "Oh, this happens all the
yeah.
time." And
Perfect, perfect.
yeah, and you just have to roll with it. And I ended up getting the offer. So,
Mhm.
you just
Mhm.
have to, we're human. We're not robots. So I think that's really important.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
that kind of transitions perfectly into the next topic.
Okay.
So, for the people I work with, and
Mhm.
really all non-native English speakers,
Right.
they're very concerned about expressions, vocabulary, grammar. They don't want to make English mistakes. And
Hmm.
so it's fairly common to write almost an
Yes.
entire script of everything you say, read it over and over and over, and try to
Right.
just memorize and
Mm.
rehearse it during the interview,
Right.
which I personally do not think is the best approach, but I would love to hear your opinion on that.
Yeah, I agree. And again, my heart goes out to people from, other parts of the world that are trying to break into the U.S. job market. First of all,
Mhm.
I commend them. I speak
Absolutely, yeah.
English. I don't speak another language. I know a few phrases in Hangul or Korean, but I'm certainly not fluent by any stretch of the imagination. I think it's important to recognize that you don't control what's asked in an interview. So if you have this script all laid out, some of those questions may never be asked, and you may be asked other ones that you're not going to be prepared for. And the other thing to realize is that the fact that you have an interview means that there are things in your cover letter and or resume that they really like, and they're excited about meeting you.
Yeah.
I truly believe, and I know this for a fact, because I've heard it from managers and I've heard it from other recruiters, and this is how I felt.
Mhm.
We want to see you at your best. So
Yeah.
authenticity is essential. If you are overly rehearsed in terms of your responses, it could come across as robotic and disingenuous, and that's not what you want. They want
Mhm.
you to be who you are. And had lots of candidates say to me, I don't speak English very well. I hope you can understand me. Or if I get the words wrong, it's okay. We can figure it out. And if we're really confused or not sure what you're trying to tell us, we'll say, we're hearing that you're saying this. Is that what you mean? And it's fine to say, no, I actually meant something else, and we'll help you.
Mhm.
It's
Mhm.
okay. It's perfectly fine. We're human. And
Mhm.
remember, an interview needs to be a two-way conversation. And
Yes.
this is the one thing that I say to applicants all the time.
Mhm.
We're checking you out, but you need to check us out too.
Mhm.
Because at the
Mhm.
end of the day, you deserve a job that's right for you. So be selective and be intentional. And if you didn't get all your questions answered, or you're not sure about something, or if you provide an answer and you're not sure it's what they're seeking, you can ask a follow up. Did I answer your question? Did I give you enough information? Was that example okay? I
Mhm.
wouldn't say for every single question you're asked, but once in a while, it's perfectly fine. But I would not recommend writing out a script because, again, you don't know what you're going to get asked. I always say an interview is like stepping into a batter's box. You don't know what you're going to get thrown. So that's my thoughts.
Great points. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So, kind of the final question here.
Hmm.
One thing that I love about working with Korean people is how humble they are. They're
Yes.
very hardworking, but
Hmm.
they're very modest. And
Hmm.
that's a great quality to have in almost all areas of life.
Yes.
However, sometimes in interviews that can cause people to undersell themselves. They don't talk as much about their accomplishments. They
Hmm.
don't really highlight all the skills they have because they're afraid that that might make them seem arrogant.
Yeah.
So, what advice do you have when it comes to sharing all your accomplishments without sounding arrogant and really showing your value to the hiring manager?
That's such a great question. And when you sent me these questions earlier, Grant, this is the one that resonated with me the most because
Mm,
I am also introverted. And so,
mm.
and I tend to be humble and I don't like to talk about myself. But an
Sure, sure.
interview is where you really have to do that because if you don't
Mm.
sell yourself, who will? And if you really
Right.
want this job, you have to, really be willing to talk about your accomplishments and talk about why you want to work with the company and how you can add value. Because remember, the goal of the interview is to keep the lines of communication open to either move to the next round or to win the offer. And you're the
Totally.
only one that can do that. So the best way to do it is to determine what you bring to the job that's also aligned with what the manager is seeking. And I've already talked about doing the gap analysis and the importance of assessing the requirements or qualifications to determine what you want to talk about. Because again, you want to talk about what you do bring to the table, not what you don't have.
Totally.
Because if you say, despite the fact that I have never, or although I have not done X, you're only giving them reasons to reject you. So focus
Yes.
on what you do bring to the table, and that should hopefully at
Mhm.
least get you to the next round. The other thing that will take the arrogance out of it is if you approach the behavioral interview questions that always start with, tell me about a time when, or give
Mhm.
me an example of a situation where you did X, when you use what's called the STAR methodology,
Mhm.
which is what was the situation or task you faced, what actions did you take, and what were the results? It's not arrogant
Mhm.
to
Mhm.
talk about something that you're proud of or something that really made a difference at the company, and it helps to distinguish you and make you a strong candidate. That's not being arrogant. So I
Mhm.
think that the one thing I will say is there's a tendency for candidates when they answer behavioral questions to talk about the team did, we did, if recruiters like me don't hear what you did specifically, then
Mm.
I start to question, what was your role? Were you a passive participant or did you really do things? So be sure to, add, even though, we as a team, we did this, my role was doing, interpreting the data or putting the presentation together
Mhm.
or
Mhm.
actually making the presentation. So just be sure that you explain what you did. So,
Great point.
your job is to convince them that you're the best candidate and can add immediate value. So think of it this way. Think of yourself as a product that you want a manager to buy. And the best way to do it is to really you convince them that you have, like manager, you're looking for these 5 things. I have 4 out of 5, or 3 out of 5, or 5 out of 5. That's your job. So I
Mm-hmm.
hope this helps.
Great points. And maybe if I do have 4 out of 5, here's what I've done so far to learn that fifth thing.
Correct. Correct. Because if you misrepresent, in other words, if you were to say that you are adept at Power BI or Tableau, and they start to drill, and you really don't know it that well, that's a guaranteed way for you not to get an offer. So I would much rather you be honest and say, I haven't really used much of Power BI, but I'm researching it, or I'm working with an associate who's going to show me how to use it because I saw in the job description how important it is.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's aces. I mean, that's really impressive.
Absolutely. And that shows that
Yeah,
you're proactive, that you're already
absolutely.
taking steps to learn and prepare for
Right.
this role, which is a great sign.
Yeah. And always have questions at the end. Even if you ask
Totally.
them during the interview, ask one at the end, like how has your position evolved over time, or what does success look like, or what would you expect to see from me in the first 60 days on the job? That shows that you're forward thinking and that you really are very interested in joining their organization.
Mm-hmm. Great, great points. Well, thank you so much for your time.
Of course.
How can people get in touch with you if they'd like to follow, learn a
Sure.
little bit more from you?
Yeah, I'm actually on LinkedIn. You are welcome to send me an invitation, and hopefully you'll customize it. But if you don't, I'll still accept it. It's fine. It's Cathy Merlo, with a C, Cathy, M as in Michael, Erlo. Yeah,
Perfect. I'll put a link to Cathy's LinkedIn page
great.
somewhere in the comments or description of this video.
Hmm.
All right. Well, thank you again, Cathy. This has been
My
a lot of
pleasure.
fun. Okay, I put Cathy's LinkedIn below. She is happy to connect with any viewers, so I highly recommend reaching out to her. And of course, if there's any way I can support you, there are links to all of my programs and everything I offer down below as well. Have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next video.